You're listening to Sleep Stories of Forgotten Jobs. Tonight, we'll spend a full day with a monastery scribe at Neamț Monastery in Moldavia in the year 1429. This is a quiet story about careful work, about candlelight, parchment, and patient repetition, about the rhythm of copying sacred texts, letter by letter, in a stone room where time moves slowly. There will be no drama here, no conflict, no sharp edges, only the gentle routine of a forgotten profession, a scribe making books by hand in an age before printing. You don't need to remember any of this. You don't need to stay awake. You can drift at any moment. In fact, falling asleep during this story is exactly what it's designed for. If it helps, take a slow breath in through your nose and let it out gently. Another breath in and out. Let your attention settle on something simple. The weight of your body against the surface beneath you. The quiet of the room around you. The fact that you have nowhere else to be right now. As you listen, you can allow the story to blur at the edges. You can let it become background. You can let your mind loosen its grip. Whenever you feel yourself drifting, you can drift. There is nothing you need to do. Let's begin. Before sunrise, the monastery is already awake in its own quiet way. The night is still present, but it has begun to thin. Cold air rests in the corridors. Stone holds the chill without changing, without hurrying. Somewhere in the darkness, a bell has sounded. Not to startle, but to mark time. Not to wake you from deep sleep, but to remind you that the pattern continues. In a place like Neamț Monastery, time is not a question. It is a pattern that has repeated for decades since the monastery's founding. You rise from a simple bed in your room. The room is small, perhaps 10 feet across. The walls are thick stone, cold to the touch, built that way deliberately. Thick walls hold warmth in winter. Thick walls muffle sound. Thick walls, if needed, can resist attack. A single narrow window lets in the faintest hint of pre-dawn blue. The window is not wide because wide windows are weak points. This monastery, like all monasteries in Moldavia, must be ready to serve as refuge if raiders come. Though under the protection of Prince Alexandru's Salbun, these are still uncertain times. The air in your room smells faintly of beeswax, wool, and old wood. Familiar scents, comforting in their constancy. You sit up slowly, letting your feet find the floor. The boards are smooth from years of footsteps, cool under your soles. You reach for a heavier woolen garment and wrap yourself against the morning cold. There is a small basin in the corner. Cold water, poured the night before from the monastery's well. The well is deep, fed by an underground spring. Another practical consideration. If the monastery gates must close, if the community must shelter within these walls, water is essential. A plain cloth is folded beside the basin. You wash your hands, your face. Not quickly. Not to shock yourself awake. Only to arrive quietly, fully in the morning. The water is bracingly cold against your skin, melted snow from the mountains carried down through stone channels. You dry your hands and face with slow, deliberate movements. Everything here has its order. You dress in the same sequence you always do. The long woolen undergarment, woven by the monastery's own workers from sheep kept in the valley below. The dark outer robe, dyed with oak bark to a deep brown black. The simple leather belt. The soft shoes made from sheepskin, practical for the cold stone floors. There is comfort in repetition. The body recognizes the sequence and follows it without argument. This is one of the lessons of monastic life. When small things are always done the same way, the mind is free for larger things. Neamț Monastery sits in a clearing surrounded by dense forests in the foothills of the Carpathian Mountains. The location was chosen for its isolation and natural protection. To the west, mountains. To the east, the forest. To approach the monastery, travelers must follow known paths. This makes defense easier. This makes surprise difficult. The monastery complex is not yet fully stone. In 1429 it is still growing, still being built and rebuilt. The first stone church was raised by Prince Petru I Mușat at the end of the last century, replacing an earlier wooden structure that stood where monks had gathered even before that. You know the monastery's history without thinking about it. It lives in the stones themselves. Founded at the end of the 14th century, when Moldavia was still finding its shape as a principality. Built in stages as funds and craftsmen became available. Protected by the rulers of Moldavia who understood that monasteries preserve more than prayers. They preserve knowledge. They preserve the written word. They preserve the memory of treaties, of land grants, of births and deaths and marriages among the noble families. In an age when few can read, those who can read hold power. And monasteries are where reading lives. Prince Alexandru cel Bun, who has ruled Moldavia for nearly 3 decades now, understands this deeply. He has expanded the chancellery, created new administrative systems, and supported the monasteries as centers of learning. The books you copy here are not mere decorations. They are tools of governance, of faith, of cultural survival. Outside your cell door, the corridor is dim. A few tallow candles burn in small niches carved into the walls. The flames are sheltered from drafts by cleverly placed stones. Fire is precious here. Fire is also dangerous. Every monk knows the stories of monasteries lost to accidental flames. A knocked candle. Sparks from a cooking fire. Lightning striking a wooden roof. This is why the library, where finished manuscripts are kept, has its own stone room with a heavy door. This is why the rules about candles are strict. This is why buckets of water stand ready in certain corridors. The written word is irreplaceable. Once burned, it is gone. Footsteps move softly past your door. Low voices, brief and polite, pass like birds in the dark. Brothers greeting each other with simple words in Romanian, though the formal prayers will be in Church Slavonic. May God bless this morning and your work today. The footsteps recede toward the church. You step into the corridor and join the quiet procession. The monastery smells different in the morning. Stone dust and incense from yesterday's prayers. Wood smoke from the kitchen fires being rekindled. The faint metallic scent of cold air pressing against old iron hinges and brackets. You walk with the calm economy of someone who knows the day will be long. Spending energy too early is like spilling ink before you write. You pass through sections of the monastery that tell its story. A passage where the stones are rougher, the work of the original builders. A corner where the mortar is newer, whiter, from repairs made just last year. A stair that creaks more than another because the wood has settled differently over the decades. The building is a living record. Each generation adds to it. Each repair becomes part of its voice. You climb the stairs slowly, your hand trailing along the stone wall, cold and slightly damp. As you walk, your mind holds an awareness of the larger world, the world beyond these monastery walls. Moldavia is at peace now, under Alexandru cel Bun's steady hand. But it is a peace maintained by vigilance. 9 years ago, in 1420, the Turks made their first real push into Moldavia, attacking the port of Cetatea Alba on the Black Sea. Alexandru cel Bun repelled them. The monastery is far from the sea, far from that battle, but the knowledge of it lives in every monastery, every village. The Turks are coming. Not today, not tomorrow, but they are coming. And so the monasteries must be strong. And so the books must be preserved. Because if the Turks come and if they conquer, the monasteries may be the last places where the faith is kept, where the language is protected, where the history is remembered. But this morning there are no Turks. There is only the cold corridor, the approaching dawn, and the daily work of prayer and writing that continues regardless of distant threats. You enter the church with the others. It is not the grand stone church that will be built later by Stephen the Great, Alexandru cel Bun's grandson. That church is still decades in the future. This is the earlier structure. Solid, functional, but more modest. The roof is lower. The windows are fewer. The air inside is warmer than the corridors. Body heat from the gathered monks, perhaps 30 men standing in their usual places. Candles flickering before icons painted in the Byzantine style with gold leaf catching the light. The smell of incense, sweet and resinous, myrrh and frankincense imported at great expense from distant lands. You find your place and stand. The abbot enters last, moving slowly, his age showing in his careful steps. He has led this monastery for more than 20 years. He was here when Alexandru cel Bun first came to power. He remembers when the prince was still consolidating his rule, still making alliances, still proving himself. The service begins. The prayers are chanted in Church Slavonic, the language of the liturgy throughout this region. Not Romanian, which you speak in daily life, but the sacred language that connects you to Constantinople, to the wider Orthodox world, to centuries of tradition. You do not need to think about the words. Your voice knows them. Your body knows when to bow, when to cross yourself, when to be still. The rhythm of the chant fills the space. Low voices and high voices weaving together. A sound like water flowing over stones. Constant, unhurried, beautiful in its repetition. You let the familiar cadence wash over you. Nothing is demanded from you except presence. If you are tired, you can be tired quietly. If you are awake, you can be awake quietly. The prayers are not a test. They are a rhythm like breathing. A reading from the Gospel. The reader's voice is clear, practiced. He stands in a pool of candlelight, the book open before him on a carved wooden stand. The book itself is old, copied decades ago, perhaps in this very monastery. The parchment has darkened slightly with age, but the letters are still clear. More prayers. A petition for the prince, for Alexandru cel Bun, for his family, for the safety of the realm. A petition for good harvests, for protection from enemies, for the souls of the departed. Then silence. A long, comfortable silence in which the candles flicker and the gathered community simply stands, breathing together. Then the final blessing. The abbot raises his hand. The gesture is simple but carries weight. This is the blessing that sends each monk to his daily work, to the tasks that keep the monastery alive. Farming, cooking, building, teaching, and for you, writing. The gathering disperses quietly. You turn toward your work. The writing room is not far from your cell. It is located on the eastern side of the monastery, where morning light will eventually reach through the windows. This placement is deliberate. Scribes need light. The best light comes from the east in the morning, steady and clear, before the sun climbs too high and becomes harsh. The room is not grand. It does not need to be. It is chosen for what it can provide. A stable surface. A controlled space. a kind of quiet that allows the mind to become narrow and steady, focused on the small movements of the hand, the precise formation of letters. As you walk through the corridors, you carry a small clay oil lamp. The flame is tiny but steady, burning the same oil used for cooking, pressed from flax seeds grown in the monastery's own fields. You shield it with your hand from the air that moves through the passages, the constant slight drafts that slip through gaps in doors and shutters. Flame is practical here. It is a tool for work, not for ceremony. But it is also dangerous. You're always aware of this. The lamp sits in a holder designed so that if it tips, the flame is smothered rather than spread. Small precautions. Small wisdoms learned over generations. You arrive at the heavy wooden door of the scriptorium. The wood is dark with age, smoothed by countless hands pushing it open over the years. There is a small dent near the bottom where something was once dropped, perhaps a stack of finished pages, a box of tools. The mark remains, a small piece of history. You lift the latch. Iron, cold against your fingers, forged in the monastery's own smithy. You step inside. The door closes with a soft sound. Wood meeting wood. A small vibration in the air. Then stillness. The scriptorium at Neamț is a modest space, perhaps 15 feet by 12. Not large enough for many scribes to work at once, but large enough for 2 or 3 when needed. Right now you work alone. The other scribes have different schedules, different projects. The walls are thick stone, slightly uneven where the mason's hand varied in pressure and speed. The ceiling is vaulted, which helps the room hold warmth in winter. Heat rises, and the curve of the vault holds it, keeps it from escaping too quickly through the roof above. There is a single window on the eastern wall. It is narrow and set deep into the stone, a defensive feature from the monastery's earliest days, when raids were more common, when every opening had to be considered as a potential weakness. Right now, before dawn, the window is only a rectangle of deep blue-gray. No light yet, just the promise of light. The room smells of dry skin, parchment waiting to be written on. It is a clean smell, slightly dusty, the scent of animal hide processed and prepared, stretched and scraped until it becomes smooth enough to hold ink. There is also the smell of beeswax and tallow from candles. Oak gall ink, slightly metallic, slightly earthy like wet stones and rust. Old wood and the calm dust of shelves that are rarely disturbed. Everything in this room moves slowly. Dust settles slowly. Temperature changes slowly. Even the progression of work is slow, measured in pages per day, not pages per hour. There is a desk. A heavy wooden writing surface, dark from years of oil and use, oil from hands, from resting forearms, from the occasional spill of lamp fuel carefully wiped away. The wood is oak, dense and strong, chosen because it does not warp easily, does not shift with changes in humidity. A stool with a woven rush seat, the rushes replaced periodically when they wear through. The stool is the right height for the desk, positioned so that when you sit, your forearm can rest comfortably on the surface, your wrist at the correct angle for holding a quill. A standing desk for the exemplar, the book you will copy from. This desk is angled, tilted toward you so that when you glance up from your own page to check the next words, you do not have to strain your neck. Small comforts. Small adjustments that prevent the work from becoming painful too quickly. On shelves along one wall, prepared parchment sheets are stacked carefully, each sheet separated from the next by a thin piece of cloth to prevent them from sticking together, to protect their surfaces. Finished pages, weighted under flat boards with heavy stones on top, pressing them flat as they dry. Tools in their places. A row of small ceramic pots, each with a fitted lid. black ink, red ink for rubrication, blue ink, rarely used, expensive, made from imported minerals. A selection of quills in various stages of preparation, knives for trimming and sharpening, pumice stones, straight edges, bits of smooth leather for burnishing. There are no unnecessary objects. Everything that remains has earned its place through usefulness. This is the monastic way. Keep what serves. Release what does not. The room is a reflection of this principle. You set your lamp down on a metal holder designed for this purpose. The holder has a wide base and a protective ring that prevents the flame from touching anything flammable. The flame throws a warm pool of light onto the surface of the desk, a circle of yellow-orange glow. Beyond it, the room is shadow. You sit on the stool. The rush seat makes a small sound as it takes your weight, a gentle creak, familiar and almost comforting. You adjust your position slightly, finding the angle that feels right. Not too far forward, not too far back. A position you can hold for hours. And for a moment before you touch anything, you let your attention land on what is here. This is a small ritual you have developed over the years. A moment of arrival. A moment of acknowledgement. You are here. The room is here. The work is waiting. A stack of prepared parchment sheets, pale and clean. A ceramic ink pot with a fitted lid, the surface decorated with a simple pattern of incised lines. A small knife for trimming quills, the blade worn thin from years of sharpening, the handle smooth from years of grip. A pumice stone, smooth and pale gray. A straight edge made from thin wood, marked with tiny notches for measuring. A container holding several goose quills, already prepared, the shafts hardened by heat, the ends trimmed to rough nibs waiting for final shaping. The day begins with preparation. Because preparation prevents trouble later. This is another lesson you have learned. Every minute spent in preparation saves 5 minutes of correction. You are working in a tradition. A lineage of scribes and miniaturists that stretches back through generations, across borders, connecting monasteries throughout the Orthodox world. Here at Neamț, the tradition is particularly strong. In this very monastery, perhaps in this very room, a monk named Gavril Uric has been developing a distinctive style of manuscript illumination. His work has become known across Moldavia and beyond. Rulers commission him. Other monasteries request his assistance in training their own scribes. His Gospel manuscript, completed this very year, 1429, is a masterwork. You have seen it briefly, held it carefully in your own hands when it was shown to the community before being sent to its recipient. The miniatures are breathtaking. The gold leaf catches light and seems to glow from within. The borders are intricate without being fussy. That manuscript will survive for centuries, though you do not know this. It will travel far from here, eventually resting in the Bodleian Library at the University of Oxford in England. Scholars will study it. They will marvel at the skill. They will note that it was created here at Neamț in 1429. Your monastery will be remembered for this. But you do not think about Oxford, a place you have never heard of. You do not think about centuries. You think about today's page, today's letters, today's portion of a gospel text that must be copied accurately, beautifully, and with devotion. The work you do here is part of something larger, though your part is small. Neamț Monastery is becoming a center of manuscript production in Moldavia. The books created here will be sent to other monasteries being founded throughout the principality. They will be given as gifts to rulers, as Prince Alexandru cel Bun strengthens alliances with Poland, with Hungary, with Lithuania. They will be used in church services across the land. The same words read in the same way, creating a unity of faith and practice that binds the scattered communities together. But that is the monastery's work, the abbot's work, the prince's work. Your work is smaller, more immediate. Your work is one page, one line, one letter, and that is enough. You arrange the tools on the desk in the order you will need them. This arrangement is automatic now, done without thought, the result of years of repetition. Parchment to the left where your non-writing hand can reach it easily. Ink pot to the right, within easy reach but far enough that your elbow cannot accidentally knock it over. Quills beside the ink, standing upright in their holder. Knife for trimming close at hand, always with the blade turned away from the parchment. Exemplar on its stand, positioned at the precise angle and distance you have found works best, where you can glance up without moving your head too much, without breaking the flow of your hand. Everything is within reach. Everything is ready. You take a slow breath, feeling your shoulders settle, feeling your mind begin to narrow its focus. The work is about to begin. You lift one sheet of parchment from the stack. The motion is careful, deliberate. Parchment is valuable. Each sheet represents hours of labor by the brothers who prepare it. Each sheet costs money that could be spent on other needs. You do not waste it. Parchment is not paper. Paper is a new technology used in some places now but not here. Here you work with parchment. Animal skin that has been transformed into a writing surface through careful, patient work. This particular sheet likely came from a calf, young enough that the skin is fine-grained, old enough that it is large enough to be useful. The process of making parchment is complex. The skin is stretched on a wooden frame, tensioned evenly so it does not tear. The hair is removed with lime and water, a caustic mixture that burns away the follicles. The flesh side is scraped clean with curved blades, removing every trace of meat and fat. The skin is dried under tension, which is what makes it different from leather. Leather is tanned, treated with chemicals that preserve it but also make it stiff. Parchment is simply stretched and dried. This makes it flexible, makes it capable of taking ink without the ink spreading uncontrollably into the fibers. Then it is scraped again with special tools, sharp but angled in a way that shaves away imperfections without cutting through. Smoothed with pumice. Sometimes rubbed with chalk to further whiten it. Finally trimmed to size with straight cuts, creating the rectangular sheets you work with. You did not do all that work yourself. At Neamț, there are brothers whose specialty is preparing parchment. One old monk, Brother Ioan, has been doing it for 40 years. His hands are permanently stained from the lime, his fingernails thick and ridged from the caustic solutions. But his parchment is the best in the region. Smooth, even, perfectly prepared. Division of labor allows each person to develop deep skill in one part of the process. Brother Ioan makes parchment. Brother Vasile mixes inks according to old recipes passed down through generations. Brother Grigor builds and repairs the writing furniture, the desks and stools. And you write. You copy. You preserve the words. But you understand the material. You know what good parchment feels like. You know what will cause problems. This knowledge comes from years of working with it, from handling thousands of sheets, from learning through small failures and careful observation. You hold the sheet near the lamplight and turn it slowly, examining it. You are looking for several things. A thin spot that might tear under the knife if you need to make a correction later. Parchment has natural variations in thickness, places where the original animal had a scar or a wrinkle. These weak points must be found now. A rough patch where the quill will catch, where the nib might snag and create a blot. The surface should be uniformly smooth. Any roughness will disrupt the flow of ink, will force you to slow down, to press harder, which increases the risk of mistakes. A small scar in the skin that will need to be avoided when you place important words. Some scars cannot be removed completely. They are simply part of the material. You work with them, around them. Perhaps a large capital letter can be placed here, where extra ink will cover the slight discoloration. Any grease or oil that will repel ink. If the skin was not properly degreased, spots remain where ink will bead up instead of soaking in. These spots are usually small, but they can ruin a line of text. Better to find them now. You do not judge the sheet. Brother Johan does excellent work. This is not about finding fault. It is about knowing your material, understanding its particular character, preparing to work with it rather than against it. Each sheet is different. Each sheet requires slightly different handling. This sheet is good. Very good. The surface is even, with only the slightest variation in thickness near one edge. The color is pale and consistent, almost white with just a hint of cream. The thickness is right, neither so thin that it is fragile nor so thick that it is stiff and hard to work with. You set it down on the desk, carefully aligned. The edges are parallel to the desk's edge. This alignment matters. When you rule lines later, you will use the desk edge as a reference. If the parchment is crooked, the lines will be crooked, and the finished page will look unprofessional, sloppy. Even good parchment benefits from a final preparation before writing. You take the pumice stone from its place on the shelf. The stone is smooth from years of use, roughly oval, fitting comfortably in your palm. It is pale gray volcanic stone, imported from somewhere to the south, passing through many hands before arriving here. You rub it lightly over the writing surface of the parchment. The motion is circular, gentle, with very little pressure. You are not trying to remove material. You are trying to raise a very slight texture that will help the ink grip without spreading. Too smooth, and the ink sits on the surface without penetrating. Too rough, and the ink spreads along the fibers like water into cloth. The motion is almost meditative. Small circles, overlapping slightly. Your hand moves without conscious direction, following a pattern you have performed thousands of times. The stone makes a soft whisper against the parchment, a sound like dry leaves brushing against each other. You can feel the subtle resistance under your palm. The parchment has a slight drag, a texture that speaks of the fibers within. Animal skin is not uniform like modern paper will someday be. It has direction, structure, memory of the living creature it once was. You work systematically as you do everything. Upper left corner first. Across the top in a band about 3 inches wide. Then down the right side. Across the bottom. Then the center, which receives the most attention because this is where most of the text will live. When you are done, you brush away the fine dust with a soft cloth. The cloth is old linen, worn so thin it is almost translucent, but perfect for this purpose. The dust comes away easily, revealing the prepared surface beneath. The parchment is ready. The first step is complete. Before you write a single letter, you must draw order onto the page. Manuscript pages are not randomly filled with text. They follow a careful layout, a geometry that has been refined over centuries. This geometry serves multiple purposes. Margins on all 4 sides. These margins are not wasted space. They are breathing room. They are protection for the text from damage at the edges. They are room for annotations, for later readers to add comments or corrections. They are a frame that shows respect for what lies within. Straight lines to guide each row of writing. Without these lines, the text would drift, rising on one side, falling on the other, creating an uneven appearance that is hard to read and looks careless. The lines keep everything level, keep everything aligned. Consistent spacing between lines. Each line must be far enough from the next that letters do not collide, that descenders from one line do not tangle with ascenders from the line below, but not so far apart that the page looks empty, that precious parchment is wasted. This order serves multiple purposes. It makes the text easier to read, the eye able to follow line after line without getting lost. It shows respect for the sacred words, treating them with the care and attention they deserve. It allows room for corrections or annotations without crowding. It creates beauty through proportion, satisfying something deep in the human eye that responds to balanced arrangements. You take a thin piece of charcoal for marking. The charcoal is specially prepared, burned from willow twigs in a slow fire, creating a soft black material that marks clearly but can be brushed away later if needed. The marks will be faint, just dark enough to see, not so dark that they show through the finished page. First, the margins. You make a tiny mark at the top of the page, measuring from the edge with your fingertips. The measurement is automatic now, your fingers knowing the distance without conscious thought. About an inch from the edge, perhaps slightly less. Then at the bottom, the same distance. Then on the left side, the outer edge. A generous margin here because this edge will eventually be bound, sewn into a book, and some of this margin will be hidden in the binding. Better to leave too much than too little. Then on the right, the inner edge, a slightly smaller margin because this edge remains visible. These marks will be your boundaries. The sacred text will live within this frame. Everything outside this frame is protective space, functional space, space that serves the text but is not the text itself. Now you take your straight edge. It is a thin strip of wood, perhaps 18 inches long, perfectly straight. Making a straight edge is more difficult than it appears. Wood warps. Wood twists. This piece was selected carefully, cut from the heart of an old oak, where the grain is tightest, where warping is least likely. It has been used for years, perhaps decades. It is worn smooth from countless hands sliding along its length, checking its straightness, using it to guide lines. You align it with your top marks, the charcoal dots you made on the left and right edges of the page. With a very sharp stylus, you draw the first horizontal line. Not carved deeply, just a light impression in the parchment, enough to create a guide that your eye can follow. This will be the line for the top row of text, the baseline where the letters will sit. Then you measure down with your fingers. The spacing between lines must be consistent throughout the page. If the spacing varies, the page looks amateurish, unplanned. You have developed a method. The width of 3 fingers measured at the second knuckle. This has proven to be the right distance for the size of letters you typically write. Too close, and the descenders from one line will tangle with the ascenders of the next. Letters with tails that hang down, like Y or G in the Cyrillic alphabet you use for Church Slavonic, need room. Letters with tall stems that rise up need room. If the lines are too close, these letters collide, creating an ugly tangle that is hard to read. Too far apart, and the page looks empty, wasteful of precious parchment. A single calf provides only a limited number of usable sheets. Every inch of writing surface is valuable. You must balance readability with economy. 3 fingers width has proven to be the right balance. You find the right distance. You mark it with a tiny charcoal dot. You place the straight edge. You draw the next line. Then you measure again. Mark, draw, measure, mark, draw. The process is repetitive, rhythmic, almost meditative. Line by line, the page becomes ready. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The lines accumulate, creating a structure, a grid that will hold the words. You work from the top down, though some scribes prefer to work from a center point outward. Either method works. The goal is the same. Consistent spacing. Straight lines. The method is steady either way. Your hand knows what to do. Your fingers know how to measure. Your eye knows when a line is straight. As you rule, the mind quiets. This is the kind of task that narrows thought, that requires just enough attention to keep you present but not so much that you cannot let your thoughts drift slightly. Like sweeping a floor, like washing a bowl, like kneading dough. Tasks that are repetitive without being boring, that allow the mind to rest while the hands work. The hand moves. The straight edge slides into position. The stylish traces its path. The lines appear one after another, patient and regular. When you finish the first page, you set it aside carefully, placing it on a clean part of the desk where it will not be disturbed. You take another sheet from the stack. You rule it the same way. The same measurements. The same careful alignment. The same patient repetition. Then a third sheet. You prepare more pages than you expect to fill today. This is a practice you learned early. Prepared pages are future calm. Tomorrow, when you sit down to work, the pages will be waiting, ready. You will not have to begin with preparation. You can begin directly with writing. This saves time. This saves mental energy for the harder work of accurate copying. Now you turn your attention to the ink. Ink is not purchased ready-made at Neamț Monastery. It is mixed by the monks according to traditional recipes passed down through generations, refined through centuries of experience across the Orthodox world. The most common ink for writing manuscripts in this time and place is iron gall ink. It is built from a few consistent ingredients, each with its own role, each essential to creating an ink that will last. Oak galls rich in tannic acid. Iron sulfate, sometimes called vitriol or copperas. Gum arabic as a binder. And water. Oak galls are the strange round growths you find on oak trees throughout the forests surrounding the monastery. They form when certain wasps lay their eggs in the bark. The tree responds by creating a ball of tissue around the irritation, protecting itself. This ball becomes hard, dense, filled with tannic acid. The galls are harvested in autumn, collected by the monastery's workers as they gather firewood and acorns. They are crushed and soaked in water or weak wine for several days. The liquid that results is dark brown, bitter if you taste it, rich in tannins that will react with iron to create the dark pigment of the ink. This tannic solution is then mixed with iron sulfate, a crystalline powder that brothers obtain from traders who travel through the region. The source of the iron sulfate is unclear, perhaps mined somewhere to the west, perhaps a byproduct of some metalworking process. You do not know the details. You only know it works. When the tannins meet the iron, a chemical reaction occurs. The mixture darkens immediately, transforming from brown to blue-black, sometimes with a slight greenish tint that fades as the ink ages. This is the magic of iron gall ink, the reaction that creates permanence. Gum arabic is added last, dissolved in warm water until it forms a thick, sticky solution. This gum, made from acacia tree resin, is also imported through traders, arriving in hard lumps that must be carefully dissolved. The gum serves as a binder. It helps the ink flow smoothly from the quill. It helps the ink adhere to the parchment. It prevents the ink from flaking off once it dries. The result is a dark ink that can range from blue-black to brownish-black depending on the exact proportions, the purity of the ingredients, the age of the mixture. Over time, over centuries even, this ink will remain dark and readable. The iron and tannins bond with the parchment at a chemical level. The words become permanent. You remove the fitted lid from the ceramic ink pot. The pot is heavy with a wide base that makes it stable, difficult to tip even if you bump it with your elbow. This is not by accident. Everything in the scriptorium is designed with accidents in mind. How do you prevent spills? Make the container stable. How do you prevent fires? Make the lamp holders safe. You look inside the pot. The surface of the ink is dark and still, like looking into a small pool of night. A faint metallic smell rises from it, the smell of iron and tannins, slightly earthy, like wet stones covered in fallen oak leaves. Ink is not only a liquid, it is a promise that the words you write will last, a promise that the effort you put into copying will not be wasted. If the ink is good, the writing will be good. If the ink behaves correctly, the writing will behave correctly. If the ink is poor, everything is harder. Everything takes longer. The results are inferior. You take a small wooden stick, smooth and clean, kept specifically for this purpose. You stir slowly, gently. Once around the pot. Twice. The motion is slow and deliberate. You are not trying to mix violently. You are not trying to whip air into the ink. You are simply ensuring even consistency. Ink settles over time. The heavier particles sink to the bottom. The lighter particles float. Stirring redistributes everything. Make sure that when you dip your quill, you get the proper mixture, not too thick, not too thin. You stir and you watch the ink move, the way it flows, the way it catches the light. If the ink is too thin, it will feather along the parchment fibers. The letters will have fuzzy edges instead of crisp, clean boundaries. Readers will have to squint to make out individual words. The manuscript will look unprofessional, careless. Too thin ink is a sign of poor craftsmanship. If the ink is too thick, it will cling to the quill and release unevenly. The strokes will be clogged and heavy in some places, thin and skipping in others. The quill will have to be dipped more frequently. The writing will be slower, more frustrating. Thick ink fights you. Good ink cooperates. You test it on a small scrap of parchment kept for exactly this purpose. A piece trimmed from a larger sheet, too small to write a full page but perfect for testing ink, for trying quills, for practicing difficult letter forms. You dip the stick lightly, just the tip, and draw a small stroke on the scrap. You watch how the line sits. The ink flows cleanly from the stick. It settles into a crisp, dark line. The edges are sharp. There is no feathering, no spreading beyond the boundaries of the stroke. You make a second stroke, perpendicular to the first, testing consistency. The second line looks identical to the first. Good. The ink is ready. You wipe the stick clean with a soft cloth, removing every trace of ink before setting it aside. Even small amounts of dried ink can flake off and fall into the pot, contaminating the mixture. Cleanliness is essential. You place the lid back on the pot, leaving it slightly ajar so you can dip the quill without fully opening it each time. You do not leave the ink fully open. Dust is always waiting. A speck of ash from the lamp. A tiny fiber from your robe. Anything that falls into the ink can clog the quill, can create a blot on the page, can ruin a carefully written line. Better to keep it covered. You reach for the container of quills. The quills are goose feathers, chosen for their size and strength. Goose quills are ideal for this work. Large enough to hold a decent amount of ink. Strong enough to maintain their shape. Flexible enough to allow variation in line thickness. They have already been prepared in earlier stages, work done during the previous weeks by yourself and others. The feathers were plucked from the bird's wing, specifically the outer primary feathers which are strongest. The barbs were stripped away, leaving only the central shaft, smooth and hollow. The quills were hardened by gentle heating. Some scribes do this by burying the quills in hot sand. Others pass them briefly near a flame, being careful not to burn them, just heating them enough that the internal moisture evaporates and the shaft becomes slightly more rigid, less likely to split when cut. But even a prepared quill must be tuned each day, sometimes several times a day. The nib wears down. The angle changes. The slit becomes wider or narrower. A quill is not a permanent tool like a knife or a straight edge. It is a consumable used up gradually, reshaped and resharpened until the shaft becomes too short, and then it is discarded. You select a quill from the container, choosing by feel. The thickness of the shaft, the weight, the balance. These subtle qualities affect how the quill handles. A heavier quill gives you more control but tires the hand faster. A lighter quill is easier to hold for hours but can feel too responsive, too quick to follow every small tremor. This one feels right. Medium weight. The shaft is straight, not curved. The hollow is clean, no cracks or splits. You hold it up to the lamplight, examining the tip. The nib, the writing end, must be shaped to hold ink and release it in a controlled flow. You take your small knife. The blade is thin, sharp, worn to a comfortable shape by years of use. The handle fits your hand perfectly, worn smooth by thousands of hours of cutting, shaping, trimming. This knife is one of your most important tools. A scribe's knife. It has been sharpened so many times that the blade is noticeably narrower than it once was. You steady the quill against the desk, holding it firmly but not so tight that you risk crushing the hollow shaft. You make the first cut, a diagonal slice to create the writing surface. The knife moves cleanly through the hardened shaft with a soft sound, a whisper of sharp metal through dense material. The cut must be at the right angle. Too steep and the nib will be too blunt, unable to create fine lines. Too shallow and the nib will be too fragile, splitting or breaking as soon as pressure is applied. You have made this cut thousands of times. Your hand knows the angle. Then you make a small slit down the center of the nib. This slit is crucial. It runs from the tip up into the shaft, perhaps half an inch long. It serves multiple purposes. It allows ink to flow from the hollow shaft down to the very tip where it meets the parchment. It provides flexibility, letting the nib spring slightly as you write, creating variation in line thickness. It prevents the nib from splitting further in the wrong direction. The slit is made with a very careful motion. The knife tip is inserted at the center of the nib. Gentle pressure downward, splitting the material evenly on both sides. Too much pressure and the split runs too far, ruining the quill. Too little and the slit does not extend far enough, restricting ink flow. Perfect pressure comes from experience. Now you shape the edges. Small, careful cuts, removing tiny slivers of material to refine the nib's profile. The nib should come to a point but not too sharp. Too sharp and it will catch on the parchment, creating scratches instead of smooth strokes. Too blunt and the letters will be thick and clumsy. You make adjustments by feel as much as by sight. A cut here. A tiny trim there. Testing the edge with your thumbnail, feeling for burrs or rough spots. The nib should be smooth. The slit should be centered. The two halves should be symmetrical. Finally, you test the quill on the scrap parchment. You dip it lightly in the ink, just enough to wet the nib without overloading it. You draw a downstroke. The ink flows cleanly. The line is crisp. You try an upstroke, which requires less pressure, a lighter touch. The line is thinner as it should be. You try a curve, testing how the nib responds to changes in direction. Does it catch? Does it skip? Does the ink flow evenly throughout the curve? The quill performs well. It feels obedient. The nib responds to small changes in pressure without being too sensitive. This is a good quill. A bad quill makes your hand tense. You can feel it immediately. The nib drags or catches. The ink does not flow smoothly. You have to adjust constantly, fighting the tool instead of working with it. But you do not fight. If a quill is bad, you set it aside and prepare another. Fighting bad tools wastes more time than making good tools. You set this quill down in a place where it will not roll, where it will not be knocked to the floor, where it will not be stepped on if you stand to stretch. A small wooden block with a groove cut into it, designed to hold quills. Small precautions. Small wisdoms. Then you prepare a second quill the same way. It is wise to have a backup ready. Quills can split suddenly. Nibs can break. Having a spare means you can continue working without interruption. Interruptions break concentration. Concentration is essential for accurate copying. As you prepare these tools, you are aware, though you rarely think about it directly, of the immense value of the work you do. Books in this time are treasures. A single gospel manuscript can be worth as much as several horses. A complete Bible can be worth a year's income for a skilled craftsman. This is why monasteries have special rooms for storing books, rooms with thick doors and locks. This is why books are chained to reading desks in some places, preventing theft. This is why when a monastery burns, the first thing monks try to save after the holy relics is the library. The value comes from the hours of labor. Preparing parchment, mixing inks, copying text, creating miniatures, binding the finished pages. A single manuscript might represent 6 months of dedicated work by a skilled scribe. Some manuscripts take years. But the value is not just economic. Books preserve knowledge that would otherwise be lost. The gospel readings, the prayers, the liturgy, the lives of saints, the chronicles of rulers and events. Without books, this knowledge lives only in memory. And memory fails. Memory dies when people die. Books make memory permanent. This is why Prince Alexandru cel Bun supports the monasteries. This is why he grants them lands and villages, income that keeps the monastic communities alive. He understands that the books preserved here are part of what makes Moldavia a principality, a Christian realm, a place with history and identity. And there is another consideration, one that is becoming more urgent with each passing year. The Ottoman Turks are expanding. Their territory creeps northward. The battle at Citatea Alba 9 years ago was a warning. They will come again. Perhaps not this year. Perhaps not next year. But they will come. And when they come, if they conquer, the monasteries may be the only places where the Christian faith is preserved, where Church Slavonic is still read, where the memory of Orthodox Moldavia survives. The books you copy today might be the books that future generations use to remember who they were, what they believed, what they valued. You do not think these grand thoughts often, but they are there, underlying the work, giving it weight beyond the simple mechanical task of moving a quill across parchment. You are not just copying. You are preserving. You are defending against the erosions of time and the threats of human conflict. Now you bring out the exemplar, the book you will copy from. The exemplar sits on its angled stand, positioned carefully so that when you glance up from your own page, you do not have to move your head too much, do not have to break the flow of your work. The stand itself is a simple piece of furniture, made here in the monastery's workshop. A slanted surface. A small lip at the bottom to prevent the book from sliding off. Adjustable pegs to hold books of different sizes. The exemplar is a gospel manuscript, older than the copy you are making. Perhaps 20 or 30 years old, though you are not certain. It was copied here at Neamț, or possibly at another monastery in Moldavia. The colophon, the note at the end where the scribe recorded his name and the date, is slightly faded. You have read it, but you do not remember the details exactly. What matters is that the text is accurate. The abbot has verified this. The manuscript has been checked against other sources, against other known reliable copies. The spelling is consistent. The abbreviations follow standard forms. The theology is sound, approved by the church hierarchy. This is crucial. When you copy, you are not simply moving letters from one page to another. You are transmitting the words of the gospel. These words matter. They must be exact. A changed word can change meaning. A lost phrase can lose truth. Your job is to be invisible, to add nothing, to remove nothing, to simply transfer what is to what will be. The book is bound in wooden boards covered with leather, darkened with age and handling. The leather is cracking slightly at the corners, the edges wearing thin. The binding cords are still strong, though holding the sections of pages firmly together. The book has been used, but it has been cared for. You open it carefully. Books are precious, but they are also tools. They are meant to be used. You do not handle it roughly, but neither do you treat it as if it were made of spider silk. You respect the binding. You do not flatten the book harshly, forcing the spine to crack. You let it open naturally to the angle it prefers. The pages have darkened slightly with age, the pale cream of new parchment aging to a warmer, richer tone. The ink is still black though. Iron gall ink does not fade. It may turn slightly brown over centuries, but it remains readable. This is one of the miracles of the material. Parchment and iron gall ink, properly prepared, last effectively forever. You turn to the page where you left off yesterday. There is a small slip of parchment marking your place, a scrap no larger than your thumb, inserted between the pages. You remove it and set it aside for later use. Then you find the line, the exact spot where you stopped. You read the last words you copied, comparing them to the exemplar. Yes, this is correct. You ended mid-sentence, which is fine. You will begin today by completing that sentence, then continuing with the next verse. The words are in Church Slavonic, written in Cyrillic script. The letters are familiar to you. You have been trained in this alphabet since you were young, since before you came to the monastery. Reading was a rare skill when you were a child. Being able to read marked you as someone who might become a clerk, a scribe, a monk. And so you were sent here. You are ready to begin. The parchment is ruled. The ink is prepared. The quill is trimmed. The exemplar is open to the correct page. Everything is aligned. Everything is ready. You take a slow breath, feeling your shoulders settle, feeling your mind narrow its focus to this moment, this page, this letter. You dip the quill into the ink. Not deep. Just enough to coat the nib and fill the hollow shaft slightly. The nib breaks the surface of the ink with a small sound, almost inaudible, a quiet tension releasing. You lift the quill and tap it lightly against the inside rim of the pot, removing any heavy drop that might blob onto the page. Then you bring the quill to the parchment. The tip hovers for a moment, poised over the first ruled line. You glance at the exemplar, reading the next few words. You hold them in your mind. Then you look down at your blank page and begin. The quill touches the parchment. The first letter is a vertical stroke, a simple downward movement. You pull the quill smoothly with steady pressure. The ink flows from the nib, leaving a dark line on the pale surface. The line appears clean, consistent, exactly as it should. Each letter is formed with a hand that has practiced the same movements thousands of times. The shapes are automatic now, encoded in muscle memory. Your hand knows how to make A, B, A, T, A, G in Cyrillic script. It knows the proportions, the angles, the curves. The shapes are not decorative for their own sake, though they have a certain beauty. They are functional. They are a code the eye can read. Each letter must be recognizable. Each letter must be distinct from the others. B cannot look like V, D cannot look like L. The shapes must be clear. You keep the quill at a steady angle, about 45 degrees to the page. This angle produces the characteristic thick and thin strokes of formal script. Downstrokes are thick because the full width of the nib contacts the parchment. Upstrokes are thin because only the edge of the nib touches. You keep pressure consistent, light but firm. Pressing hard does not make the ink flow better. It only wears out the nib faster and can damage the parchment, creating grooves and indentations. Good writing comes from correct angle and light pressure, not from force. The sound is soft, a light scratch, a faint whisper of tip against parchment, the quiet friction of tool and material. It is a sound you have heard for hours every day for years. It is the sound of your work, as familiar as your own breathing. You write one letter, then the next, then the next. Each letter connects to form a word. Each word connects to form a phrase. The text begins to grow on the page, letter by letter, following the ruled lines you prepared earlier. You work in short segments. This is the method you have developed, the method that works best for you. Some scribes read an entire sentence before writing. Some read only a word at a time. You have found that a few words, a short phrase, is the right amount. Look at the exemplar. Read 3 or 4 words. Hold them in mind. Look down at your page. Write those words. Look up. Read the next phrase. Look down. Write. The cycle repeats over and over, a rhythm of looking and writing. Hold. Write. Hold. Write. It is a small loop, repeated hundreds of times in a session, thousands of times in a day. The loop itself becomes soothing, a meditation, a focusing of attention that allows everything else to fade. If your mind wanders too far, your hand will drift. The letters will become uneven. A word might be skipped. A letter might be formed incorrectly. So you keep your mind close to the letters, not tight, not gripping, just close, present, aware. As you write, you are dimly aware of the room around you. The lamp still burns beside you, the flame steady, the small pool of warm light holding back the pre-dawn darkness. But the window has begun to change. The deep blue-gray is lightening, becoming more blue than gray, the first hint that the sun, still below the horizon, is approaching. No direct light yet. Just a general brightening of the eastern sky. The change is gradual, almost imperceptible from moment to moment, but over the span of minutes it is clear. The room is not silent. It is simply quiet. You hear the lamp, a small hiss when the oil feeds the wick, a tiny pop now and then when a small impurity in the oil combusts. The flame is living fire, constantly consuming, constantly changing, never exactly the same from one heartbeat to the next. You hear the wood of the desk. A soft creak when you shift your weight, when you lean forward slightly to begin a new line. A faint sound when your forearm moves and the grain of the wood catches slightly against the fabric of your sleeve. You hear the parchment when you lift a finished sheet and set it aside on the drying stack. The quiet rustle of prepared skin against wood, a sound like dry leaves, like thin leather, like the material it is. From somewhere farther away, beyond the closed door of the scriptorium, you may hear the monastery's life continuing. A door opening somewhere in a distant corridor. Footsteps, muffled by stone walls and intervening rooms, someone walking to the kitchen, perhaps to begin preparing the morning meal. A low voice, too distant to make out words, one brother calling a greeting to another. Everything is muffled by the thick stone walls, softened, made part of the background. The monastery is a shell within which many small activities happen simultaneously, each in its own chamber, each pursuing its own purpose, all held together by common prayers and common walls. You continue writing. The text grows. 1 word, 2 words, 5 words, 10 words. A line is completed. You begin the next line, starting at the left margin, following the ruled guide. The letters march across the page in orderly rows, patient and regular. As your hand moves, as the letters appear, a part of your mind holds an awareness of why this work matters, why the abbot assigns scribes to this task, why Prince Alexandru cel Bun supports monasteries with grants of land and income. The year is 1429. Prince Alexandru cel Bun has ruled Moldavia for nearly 3 decades. It has been a period of relative stability, of administrative reforms, of strengthening alliances. He has created the Council of the Voivode, the Chancellery, new offices and institutions that give Moldavia the structure of a principality rather than a loose collection of territories. He has defended the realm against external threats. The battle at Citatea Alba 9 years ago, when the Ottoman Turks made their first serious attempt to take Moldavian territory. Alexandru cel Bun drove them back, reinforcing the defenses, proving that Moldavia would not be easily conquered. But the Turks remain a presence to the south. They are expanding their territory, taking more of the Balkans, pressing northward. It is only a matter of time before they return, and so the monasteries must be strong. The books must be preserved. If the Turks conquer the cities, the monasteries in their isolated valleys might be the last refuges. This year has also brought tensions with Poland. A treaty signed at Lublau that Alexandru cel Bun learned of only recently. Political maneuverings that threaten to pull Moldavia into conflicts not of its choosing. The prince is navigating carefully, maintaining alliances while protecting Moldavian interests. But here in the monastery, these distant events are known only through rumors, through occasional visitors, through messages the abbot receives from the prince's chancellery. The daily life continues. The prayers, the work, the slow, patient effort of preserving knowledge. You do not think about these things directly as you write, but they form a backdrop, a context that gives meaning to the work. You are not just copying words. You are preserving the culture of your people. You are maintaining the thread of tradition that connects the present to the past and the past to the future. The window has fully brightened now. The sun has risen, though you cannot see it directly from where you sit. The light that enters the scriptorium is indirect, filtered through the narrow opening, bouncing off stone walls. It is pale and cool, the light of early morning in late winter or early spring. You have been writing for perhaps 2 hours now. Your first page is complete, drying on the stack with the other prepared sheets. You have begun the second page. The letters continue their patient march across the ruled lines. Your hand has found its rhythm now. The initial stiffness of starting has worn away. Your fingers remember how to hold the quill. Your wrist remembers the angle. Your arm remembers the small movements that create each letter. Everything flows more easily than it did in the first minutes. This is when the work is best. Not at the beginning when you are still settling in. Not at the end when fatigue makes every letter feel heavier. But here, in the middle hours, when the rhythm has established itself and the mind can rest into the repetition. You dip the quill again. The ink pot is slightly lower now, the level dropping as you use it. You will need to refill it at some point, probably after the midday meal. Brother Vasile keeps larger containers of prepared ink in the storage room. You will take your pot there and refill it from one of his ceramic jars. The quill moves across the page. Curve here. a straight stroke there. The letters of Church Slavonic have their own character, different from the Latin alphabet used in the West. Some letters look similar. Others are unique. The script has a vertical emphasis, the letters standing upright like a row of pillars. You are copying a passage from the Gospel of Matthew. The words are familiar. You have read them many times. You have heard them chanted in services. But familiarity does not make you careless. Each word must be exact. Each letter must be formed correctly. As you work, you become aware of small discomforts beginning to accumulate. This is normal. Expected. The body was not designed to sit in one position for hours, to hold one posture, to repeat one small motion endlessly. Your lower back has begun to stiffen slightly. The muscles that support your spine, that hold you upright on the backless stool, are working constantly. They do not get to rest. Over hours they tire. You shift your weight slightly, adjusting your position. Not much. Just enough to change which muscles are bearing the load. Your neck feels the strain of looking down at the page, then up at the exemplar, then down again. The constant small movement, repeated hundreds of times, creates tension. You pause in your writing and slowly roll your head from side to side, stretching the muscles. The movement is gentle, not forced. Just enough to release some of the accumulated tightness. Your right hand, the hand that holds the quill, has begun to ache slightly. The small muscles that control your fingers, that maintain the precise grip needed to guide the nib, are working constantly. Over time they fatigue. Your fingers want to grip tighter, which only makes the problem worse. You consciously relax your grip, letting the quill rest lightly in your hand. Your eyes are beginning to feel the strain as well. Focusing at close distance for extended periods is tiring. The small letters, the need to distinguish similar shapes, the constant reading and comparing between exemplar and your own page. Your eyes want to rest, to look at something distant, to release the constant near focus. You look up from the page and gaze out the window for a moment. The view is limited, just a slice of sky and the edge of a building, but it is distant. Your eyes can relax. The muscles that control focus can release. You blink several times, moistening your eyes, which have become dry from concentrating. These small breaks are important. You have learned this over years of work. If you push through discomfort, if you ignore the BOTA signals, you will pay for it later. Your back will spasm. Your hand will cramp. Your vision will blur. Better to take small breaks frequently than to push until you must stop completely. You stand for a moment, rising from the stool carefully. Your legs have stiffened from sitting. You stretch your arms above your head, feeling your spine lengthen, feeling the vertebrae separate slightly. The stretch feels good, a release of accumulated tension. You breathe deeply, filling your lungs, then releasing the air slowly. You walk to the window and look out at the monastery grounds. From this angle, you can see part of the courtyard. A few brothers are moving about their morning tasks. One carries a basket of bread from the kitchen to the refectory. Another is sweeping the flagstones, the motion of the broom steady and rhythmic. The sky is clear this morning, a pale blue with high thin clouds. The air will be cold but not bitter. Spring is approaching, though winter has not fully released its hold. In a few weeks, the trees will begin to bud. The monastery's orchards will bloom. But for now, everything is still dormant, waiting. You turn to your stool and sit again. You pick up the quill. You find your place on the page. You continue. The work resumes its rhythm. You make a mistake. Your eye skips a word in the exemplar, jumping from one phrase to another. You write the wrong word. You realize it immediately the moment the letters appear on the page. The word does not fit. The sentence does not make sense. You stop. You set down the quill carefully, placing it in its holder so it does not roll. You examine the error. It is one word incorrectly written. The error is fresh. The ink is still wet, slightly shiny in the lamplight. You could try to erase it while the ink is wet, blotting it away with a damp cloth. But this often creates a smudge that is worse than the original error. Better to let it dry and scrape it away carefully with a knife. This is the standard method for corrections. But you will not do it now. You will mark the error lightly with a tiny symbol in the margin, a small notation only you will understand, and you will continue writing. Later, when the page is complete and fully dry, you will return with your knife and carefully scrape away the incorrect word. Then you will re-smooth the scraped area with pumice and write the correct word in its place. This is the reality of the work. Mistakes happen. Even the most skilled scribes make errors. Eyes tire. Attention wavers. A word is skipped. A letter is formed incorrectly. Two similar words are confused. It is human to err. What matters is catching the errors and correcting them. This is why each manuscript is checked after copying, read through by another monk who compares the new copy to the exemplar. Two sets of eyes catch more than one. Some errors are subtle, easy to miss when you are the one who wrote them. You have heard stories of manuscripts with significant errors, whole sentences skipped, verses numbered incorrectly, theologically problematic phrasings that crept in through careless copying. These errors can propagate. If a flawed copy is used as an exemplar for future copies, the error spreads, multiplying through generations of manuscripts. This is why accuracy matters. This is why you work slowly, carefully, checking each phrase. The words you are copying are sacred. They deserve your full attention, your best effort, your willingness to correct when you fail. You make a small mark in the margin beside the error, a tiny dash that you will recognize later. Then you find the correct word in the exemplar. You take a breath, centering yourself. You continue with the correct text, leaving space where the error will eventually be scraped away and rewritten. As you work on the Gospel manuscript, you are aware of another project waiting. On a shelf nearby, carefully wrapped in cloth, is a document that arrived from Prince Alexandru cel Bun's chancellery last week. It is a decree, a formal pronouncement regarding commercial privileges for traders from the city of Lvov. The decree must be copied. The original will be returned to the prince's archive. The copy will be kept here at the monastery as a record. This is part of the monastery's function, serving as a repository of important documents, preserving the administrative history of the principality. The decree is written in Romanian, not Church Slavonic. The script is slightly different, the language more direct, less formal. It lists the specific privileges granted, the taxes exempted, the protections provided. It is sealed with the prince's seal, pressed into wax, the impression showing the symbol of Moldavia, an auroch's head. You will copy this document later, perhaps tomorrow or the day after. The abbot has instructed you to complete the current gospel page first. Religious texts take priority. But the secular documents are important too. They are part of the record of Alexandru cel Bun's reign, part of the story of how Moldavia is governed. These administrative documents reveal the prince's strategy. He grants trade privileges to cities in Poland, strengthening economic ties, creating alliances through commerce. He expands the Moldavian ports of Citatea Alba and Chilia on the Black Sea, increasing trade revenue, building Moldavia's wealth. Wealth means power. Power means the ability to maintain armies, to defend borders, to resist the Ottoman expansion that threatens from the south. The books you copy and the decrees you preserve are all part of this larger effort, building and maintaining a principality that can survive in dangerous times. The monastery where you sit is not just a place of prayer and scholarship. It is also a fortress, designed to serve as refuge if needed. You are aware of this, though it is rarely discussed directly. The thick walls, the narrow windows, the heavy doors with iron reinforcement. The location itself provides protection. Surrounded by forest, accessible only by known paths, the monastery can see approaches from a distance. The well within the walls means the community can survive a siege. The storage rooms hold grain and preserved foods, enough to last for weeks if the gates must be closed. Other monasteries in Moldavia have similar defensive features. Putna, founded by Stephen the Great's family. Bistrița, where Alexandru cel Bun himself will be buried when he dies. These are not just religious institutions. They are strong points, places where resistance can be organized, where records and treasures can be protected. If the Ottomans come, as they surely will eventually, the cities may fall. The fortresses may be besieged. But the monasteries, scattered in their valleys and mountains, may survive. And if they survive, the culture survives. The faith survives. The written memory survives. This is why you copy manuscripts, not just for current use, though that is important, but for the future, for the time when these books may be all that remains, the only connection to what was lost. You dip your quill again and continue writing. The letters flow onto the page. The work continues. A bell sounds, distant but clear. The call to the midday meal. You have been expecting it, listening for it without consciously waiting. Your stomach has been quietly signaling hunger for the past hour, a gentle emptiness that you have acknowledged but not dwelt on. You finish the word you are writing. Not rushing but not starting a new line either. This is a good stopping point. You set the quill in its holder and wipe your hands on a cloth kept for this purpose. Ink has a way of transferring from quill to fingers to everything you touch. Wiping your hands prevents accidents. You stand slowly, feeling the stiffness in your back, the slight numbness in your legs from sitting. You stretch again, arms above your head, then bending forward slightly to stretch the lower back. The movement releases tension, brings blood flow back to muscles that have been static. You take a moment to secure the workspace before leaving. The ink pot, lid replaced fully now, preventing dust or debris from falling in during your absence. The quills return to their holder. The drying pages weighted down so a draft cannot disturb them. The lamp extinguished, the wick trimmed for later relighting. These small precautions are automatic, part of the routine of leaving the scriptorium. Fire is always a concern. A lamp left burning unattended is a risk. A gust of wind through the window could blow papers into the flame. A moth could fly into the oil and create a flare. Better to extinguish it and relight it when you return. You leave the room, closing the door firmly behind you. The corridor outside is brighter now, midday light filtering through windows and openings throughout the monastery. Other monks are moving toward the refectory, the dining hall. You join the quiet procession. The refectory is a long room with heavy wooden tables and benches. The tables are worn smooth from decades of use, the wood dark with oil and handling. The room smells of food, of bread and soup, of onions and cabbage, of the grain porridge that is a staple of the monastery's diet. The monks gather and wait. The abbot enters, moving to his place at the head table. He blesses the food with a brief prayer. Not elaborate, not lengthy. A simple acknowledgement that what you are about to receive is a gift, that you are grateful, that you will not waste it. Then everyone sits. The benches scrape against the stone floor. The sound of 30 men settling into place, a brief moment of adjustment, then stillness. Serving brothers bring the food. Large wooden bowls of soup, thick with barley and root vegetables. Baskets of dark bread, dense and heavy, baked in the monastery's own ovens. Clay pitchers of weak beer, which is safer to drink than water from uncertain sources. The monastery's well is good, but beer keeps better and provides some nutrition. As the meal is served, one of the younger brothers stands at a lectern and begins to read. This is the custom at meals. Eating in silence except for a reading from scripture or from the lives of saints. The voice of the reader fills the room, clear and practiced, reading from a manuscript of saints' lives. The story today is of Saint Anthony of Egypt, the desert father who lived in solitude, who resisted temptation, who became a model of ascetic devotion. The words wash over you as you eat. You have heard this reading before. It is a rotation, cycling through the same text year after year. You are not required to pay close attention. The reading serves multiple purposes. It provides edification, yes, but it also covers the sounds of eating, the scraping of spoons, the chewing of bread. It maintains the contemplative atmosphere even during the practical necessity of taking food. The soup is hot and filling. The flavor is simple. Barley, onions, cabbage, perhaps a bit of dried fish for salt and substance. No meat today. Meat is rare in the monastery's diet, reserved for feast days, for times when a benefactor sends a gift, for special occasions. The vegetables come from the monastery's own gardens, tended by brothers assigned to agricultural work. The grain comes from fields owned by the monastery, worked by peasants who owe service in exchange for protection and spiritual care. The monastery is largely self-sufficient, producing most of what it needs. The bread is dense and dark, made from rye and barley with perhaps some wheat mixed in. It requires strong teeth and patient chewing. But it is nourishing, packed with fiber and grain. It keeps hunger at bay for hours. It is the foundation of the diet here. You eat slowly without rushing. There is enough. There is always enough. The monastery is not wealthy, but neither is it starving. The lands granted by Alexandru cel Bun provide sufficient income. The harvests have been adequate. The stores are not empty. You dip the bread in the soup, softening it, absorbing the broth. The combination is satisfying. Warm, filling, simple. You do not think about flavor particularly. Food is fuel. It is necessity. It is a gift to be received with gratitude but not dwelt upon. As you eat, you glance around the refectory at your brothers. You know most of them by name, by face, by the work they do. Brother Ioan, the parchment maker, sits near the end of a table, his stained hands curled around a wooden spoon. Brother Vasile, who mixes inks, sits nearby, already planning his afternoon work. Brother Stefan, who tends the library, the room where finished manuscripts are stored. His work is quiet, meticulous. He catalogs the collection, keeps records of which books are where, repairs bindings that have weakened, keeps watch for signs of moisture or insect damage. Brother Mihai, one of the younger monks, still learning his craft. He assists the older brothers, grinding pigments, preparing parchment, cleaning tools. Someday he may become a scribe himself, if he shows the aptitude, if his hand is steady, if his attention to detail proves sufficient. This is your community. These men. This place. These walls. You have lived here for years. Some of these brothers will die here. You may die here yourself. This is not a morbid thought. It is simply reality. The monastery is a life commitment. When you took your vows, you chose this path, this place, this work. The reading continues. Saint Anthony in the desert, facing demons in the form of wild beasts, beautiful women, visions of gold and treasure. He resists. He prays. He endures. The demons flee. God provides. The familiar story unfolds. You finish your soup, your bread. You drink the weak beer, which is slightly sour, slightly yeasty, refreshing in its own way. The meal is complete. The abbot rises. Everyone stands. A brief prayer of thanks. Then dismissal. You do not return immediately to the scriptorium. The afternoon work will be long. A brief period of rest is wise. You walk out into the courtyard, joining a few other brothers who have also chosen to spend a few minutes outside. The air is cold but not bitter. The sun is bright, though it provides more light than warmth. The courtyard is paved with large stones, fitted together with skill. In the center there is a well with a wooden cover. The bucket hangs on a hook, ready for use. You walk slowly around the perimeter of the courtyard, stretching your legs, letting your body move after hours of sitting. Movement feels good. Your back releases more of its stiffness. Your legs remember how to carry you. You can see the monastery's defensive walls from here, thick stone rising perhaps 15 feet high. There is a wooden gate reinforced with iron bands. There are positions on the walls where defenders could stand if needed. There are storage rooms built into the thickness of the walls. But today there is no threat. Today there is only cold sunshine, gray stone, the sound of a few birds calling from the forest beyond the walls. The monastery sits in its clearing, solid and patient, as it has for decades. You think briefly about the larger world. About Prince Alexandru cel Bun in his capital at Suceava, governing his principality, managing alliances, defending borders. About the Ottomans to the south, still distant but ever present in everyone's awareness. About the books you copy, the words you preserve. Then you let these thoughts go. They are too large for this moment. This moment is just cold air, gray stone, weak sunshine. Just your body walking, your lungs breathing, your feet on solid ground. This is enough. A bell sounds. The call to afternoon work. You turn back toward the building. You return to the scriptorium. The work continues. You return to the scriptorium feeling refreshed. The brief walk, the simple food, the period of rest have restored some energy. Your back feels less stiff. Your hand has released its cramping. Your eyes have had a break from close focus. You relight the lamp, even though the window now provides good natural light. The lamp provides supplemental light for close work, especially for the detailed task you are about to begin. Illumination. Adding decorated capital letters to the manuscript. Not every page receives illumination. That would be too time-consuming, too expensive in materials. But important sections, the beginning of chapters, the start of new books within the Gospel, these receive decorated initials. Large letters, filled with color, sometimes with gold leaf, sometimes with intricate patterns. This is work that requires different materials, different skills. You are not a master illuminator like Gavril Uric. His work involves complex miniatures, full illustrations, gold backgrounds that seem to glow with inner light. Your illuminations are simpler, but they still require care, precision, and materials beyond simple ink. You bring out small ceramic dishes, each no larger than a coin. In these dishes you have prepared pigments. The preparation was done days ago, grinding minerals and organic materials to fine powder, mixing them with binding medium, testing them for color and consistency. Red from ground cinnabar, a mineral compound of mercury and sulfur. Bright, slightly orange-toned red. Expensive, imported from distant mines, but traditional for important religious manuscripts. You use it sparingly, making each small quantity go as far as possible. Blue from azurite, a copper-based mineral. Deep, rich blue, the color of the evening sky. Also expensive. Also imported. A small dish of this blue represents significant cost, but it creates a visual impact that simpler pigments cannot match. Yellow from orpiment, another sulfur compound. Bright, warm yellow. Less expensive than the blue and red, but still not cheap, and somewhat toxic, requiring careful handling. You do not lick the brush when using orpiment. You do not breathe the dust when grinding it. Green from verdigris, created by exposing copper to vinegar and salt. A chemical reaction that produces the characteristic blue-green patina. This pigment you can make here at the monastery, though it requires time and patience. Copper strips suspended over vinegar in sealed pots, waiting for weeks as the reaction proceeds. Each pigment is mixed with a binding medium, usually egg tempera. Egg yolk mixed with water creates a medium that suspends the pigment particles, allows them to be applied with a brush, and dries to a durable finish. The proportions must be right. Too much egg and the paint is sticky and glossy. Too little and the pigment does not adhere well. You also have small quantities of gold. Not solid gold, which would be impossibly expensive, but gold leaf beaten so thin it is translucent, almost weightless. A single gold coin can be beaten into enough leaf to decorate many manuscript pages. The skill lies in applying it, in making it adhere without tearing, in polishing it to a reflective shine. You have reached a point in the text where a new section begins. Here you will create a large decorated initial. The letter itself is part of the first word of the new section. You have left space for it on the page, a gap in the text where the decorated letter will go. First, you lightly sketch the letter in charcoal. Just the outline, the basic shape. This sketch will be covered by paint and gold, but it guides your work, ensures the letter is properly sized and positioned. The letter is AB in Cyrillic, formed by a vertical stroke with two curves bulging to the right. You will make this letter 3 times the height of the regular text. It will occupy 3 lines of height, extending from the baseline of the text up through 2 lines above. This creates visual hierarchy, signals to the reader that something new is beginning. The interior of the letter will be filled with gold. The outline will be painted in deep blue. Additional decorative elements, small tendrils and flourishes extending from the corners of the letter, will be painted in red and green. This is the standard color scheme for important initials at Neamț, though variations exist. You begin with the gold. Gold must be applied first because it is difficult to work with. If you paint first and add gold later, the gold leaf tends to stick to the paint in unwanted places. Better to lay the gold on bare parchment, then paint around it. You take a small amount of gesso, a special preparation that creates a slightly raised, sticky surface. Gesso is made from powdered gypsum mixed with rabbit skin glue, ground to perfect smoothness. You apply it very carefully within the outline of the letter, creating a thin raised cushion. The gesso must dry to the right consistency. Too dry and the gold will not stick. Too wet and the gold will sink into it and lose its shine. You test it by breathing on it. Your breath contains moisture. If the gesso surface becomes tacky when breathed on, it is ready. You lift a small piece of gold leaf with a dry brush. Gold leaf is almost impossibly thin, lighter than the smallest feather. It moves with the slightest air current. You must work carefully, patiently. No sudden movements. No heavy breathing that might blow it away. You bring the gold leaf to the gesso surface and gently press it down. The gold adheres to the tacky gesso. You use a soft brush to press it firmly, ensuring good contact. Some gold extends beyond the edges of the letter. This is intentional. Better to have excess that can be removed than to have gaps. Once the gold is fully adhered, you use a polishing stone, a small piece of smooth agate, to burnish the surface. You rub gently but firmly. The gold begins to shine, reflecting light, creating that characteristic glow. The more you burnish, the brighter it becomes. The stone smooths out any wrinkles, any imperfections. Then you use a soft brush to carefully remove the excess gold, the bits that extend beyond the intended area. These bits can be saved, collected, used again. Gold is too valuable to waste. Every tiny fragment is recovered and stored for future use. Now you have a shining gold letter. It catches the light from the window, from the lamp. It seems to glow. This is the magic of gold in manuscripts. Even in dim light, even by candlelight, gold catches and reflects, draws the eye, creates beauty. Now you add the painted elements. You mix a small amount of blue pigment with egg tempera on a smooth stone palette. Just a tiny amount. Enough for this one letter. You cannot store mixed paint. It dries and becomes unusable. Better to mix small quantities as needed. You use a very fine brush, made from a few squirrel hairs bound to a thin stick. The brush comes to a perfect point when wet. You load it with a blue paint, carefully controlling the amount. Too much paint and it will blob onto the page. Too little and the color will be weak. You outline the gold letter in blue. A thin, precise line that defines the edge. The blue paint against the gold creates a strong contrast, making the gold stand out even more. Your hand is steady. You have done this many times. The brush moves smoothly, leaving a clean line. Then you add the decorative flourishes. Small curving tendrils that extend from the corners of the letter. These are painted in red and green, alternating colors, creating visual interest. The tendrils curl and loop in traditional patterns, patterns you have seen in other manuscripts, patterns that connect your work to the broader tradition of Orthodox manuscript illumination. Each flourish requires multiple strokes. First the main line of the tendril, curving gracefully. Then small leaves or buds emerging from the curve. Then tiny dots or lines for additional detail. The work is meditative, requiring focus but not anxiety. Your hand knows what to do. As you work, you are aware of the history of this craft. Illuminated manuscripts have been created for centuries. Monks in Constantinople, in Greece, in Russia, in Serbia, all have contributed to this tradition. The patterns you use, the color schemes, the techniques, these have been refined over generations. And you are adding to this tradition. The manuscript you are creating will join the others in the monastery's library. It will be used in services. It may be copied by future scribes who will look at your illuminations and learn from them, perhaps copy them exactly, perhaps add their own variations. You finish the painted elements and set the page aside to dry. Paint dries more slowly than ink. It must not be touched until fully set, or the colors will smudge, the hard work will be ruined. You place the page on a special rack, elevated so air can circulate around it, speeding the drying. As you work on these beautiful illuminations, you are conscious of how fragile they are, how easily they could be lost. Fire is the greatest threat. A single spark, a knocked candle, a lightning strike, and everything in this room could burn. You think of stories you have heard. Monasteries lost to fire. Libraries reduced to ash. Centuries of accumulated knowledge destroyed in a few hours. The monastery at Croyland in England, where fire destroyed over 300 manuscripts. The Imperial Library in Constantinople, damaged by crusaders and fire, its treasures scattered and lost. This is why the scriptorium has stone walls, stone floors, minimal wood. This is why the lamp has its protective holder. This is why there are buckets of water in the corridors, why sand is kept near any source of flame, why the rules about candles are strict and enforced. But fire is not the only threat. Water can damage manuscripts. A leaking roof, a flood, even excessive humidity can cause parchment to warp, inks to run, gold to lift away from the surface. This is why the library has its special room, elevated, with drainage, with ventilation. Insects can destroy manuscripts. Silverfish eat the starch in the sizing. Moths lay eggs in the parchment. Mice and rats chew on anything organic. This is why the library is inspected regularly, why certain herbs are placed among the shelves to repel insects, why cats are tolerated in monastery buildings despite the general preference for order and cleanliness. And humans can damage manuscripts. Rough handling. Dirt from unwashed hands. Spilled food or drink. This is why manuscripts are kept locked away except when in use. This is why readers wash their hands before touching books. This is why rules exist about where books can be taken, how they can be used. Brother Stefan, the librarian, takes his role seriously. He knows the location of every manuscript. He knows which are most valuable, most fragile, most in need of protection. In case of emergency, in case of fire or attack, he knows which books must be saved first. The oldest manuscripts. The most rare texts. The ones that cannot be replaced. But ideally, emergency never comes. Ideally, the books sit safely on their shelves, protected by thick walls and careful guardianship, surviving year after year, decade after decade, passing from generation to generation. The light from the window has begun to change. The bright midday illumination has softened, taken on a warmer tone. The sun is moving lower, shifting the angle of the light entering the scriptorium. Shadows are lengthening. You have been working for most of the day now. The illuminated capital is dry. You have returned to regular copying, adding lines of text to your current page. The work continues steadily, but you can feel the accumulation of the day's effort. Your back has stiffened again despite the midday break. The muscles along your spine are tired of holding you upright, tired of maintaining posture hour after hour. You shift your weight, trying to find a position that provides relief. There is no perfect position. There is only the distribution of discomfort across different muscle groups. Your hand aches more noticeably now. The small muscles of your fingers, the tendons that run from fingers to wrist to forearm, all are tired. Your grip on the quill wants to tighten in compensation, but you know this only makes things worse. You consciously relax, again and again, fighting the tendency to grip too hard. Your eyes are strained. The constant close focus, the need to distinguish small details, the reading and comparing between exemplar and your own page. Your vision has started to blur slightly around the edges. You blink, trying to clear it. You look away from the page, focusing on the distant wall, giving your eyes a moment of different focus. This is the hardest part of the day. The morning's freshness is gone. The midday renewal has worn off. Fatigue has accumulated, and the end of the workday is still an hour or more away. This is when mistakes are most likely, when concentration wavers, when the temptation to rush becomes strongest. But you do not rush. Rushing creates errors. Errors require correction. Correction takes time. Better to maintain steady pace even when tired, than to rush and create problems that will take even longer to fix. You dip the quill. You form the letters. The work continues. A bell sounds. The call to Vespers, the evening prayer service. This marks the transition from afternoon to evening. The sun has not yet set, but the day is winding down, preparing for night. You set down your quill and wipe your hands. You stand slowly, feeling every hour of sitting in your back and legs. You stretch briefly, then leave the scriptorium and join the procession to the church. The church is dimmer now than it was at morning prayers. The afternoon light filtering through the narrow windows is golden, slanted, creating long shadows. Candles have been lit before the icons, their flames steady and bright in the gathering dimness. You find your place among the other monks and stand. Your body knows this posture. Standing for prayers is different from sitting for writing. Standing uses different muscles, creates different strains. But the change itself is relief. Movement is relief. The service begins. The evening hymns are more contemplative than the morning prayers, more reflective. The day is ending. Work is concluding. The themes are of completion, of gratitude for what has been given, of release into the night's rest. The chant fills the space. You add your voice to the others, not thinking about the words particularly, just letting your voice join the collective sound. There is something comforting about this, about being one voice among many, about the individual dissolving into the community. The service is not long, perhaps 20 minutes, a reading, some prayers, a final blessing, then dismissal. The monks disperse to their final tasks before the evening meal. You return to the scriptorium. There is still a bit of work you want to complete before the day ends. The light is definitely fading now. The window shows deep gold fading to orange. Soon it will be too dim to work by natural light alone. The lamp provides some illumination, but it is not enough for detailed writing. Another hour at most, perhaps less. You look at your current page. You are near the bottom. Perhaps 6 more lines will complete it. You decide to finish this page before stopping for the day. Completing a full page is satisfying, provides a clear end point, a sense of accomplishment. You focus your attention, gathering yourself for this final push. Your hand is tired, but it can manage 6 more lines. Your eyes are strained, but they can read 6 more lines. Your back can hold you upright for another 20 minutes. You dip the quill and begin the next line. The letters form slowly, carefully. Each stroke is deliberate. You do not let fatigue make you careless. The last line of the day deserves the same attention as the first. 1 line complete. Then another. The text advances down the page. 3 lines. 4 lines. The ruled guides help you keep the letters level, properly spaced. 5 lines. 6 lines. The final line is complete. The page is finished. You set down the quill and look at what you have created. A full page of text, neat and consistent, with one beautiful illuminated capital. Perhaps 200 words. Perhaps 300. A small portion of the Gospel of Matthew, copied accurately, ready to take its place in a new manuscript. You feel a quiet satisfaction. Not pride exactly. Pride would be inappropriate. You are not the author of these words. You are only the conduit. But satisfaction in work done well, in a day's effort completed, in the continuing contribution to the monastery's purpose. You begin the process of securing the scriptorium for the night. This is important. The work must be protected. The materials must be stored properly. Everything must be ready for tomorrow. First, the ink. You check the level in the pot. still enough for tomorrow's work. You replace the lid firmly, ensuring it is seated properly, preventing evaporation and contamination. The ink goes on the shelf, away from the edge where it could be knocked off. The quills. You examine the one you have been using. The nib is worn, the point slightly blunted from hours of use. It can be resharpened, ret-rimmed, used again tomorrow. You place it with the others in the holder. The completed pages. These are your most valuable product. You gather them carefully, ensuring they are fully dry, stacking them in proper order. The illuminated page needs more drying time. You leave it on the elevated rack where air can circulate. You weight the stack of completed pages with a flat board and a smooth stone. This keeps them from curling, keeps them flat and even. Over time, weighted parchment becomes beautifully flat, perfect for binding into books. The exemplar. You close it gently, treating it with the respect it deserves. You place it on its shelf, positioning it carefully so it will not fall, so the binding is not stressed. Books must be stored properly. Standing upright puts strain on the binding. Lying flat is better, though it takes more shelf space. The lamp. You extinguish it carefully, snuffing the flame by covering it, cutting off oxygen. You do not blow it out, which can spread small sparks. Once extinguished, you trim the wick for tomorrow, cutting away the charred portion. A fresh wick lights more easily, burns more cleanly. You look around the room one more time. Everything is in its place. The desk is clear. The tools are stored. The materials are protected. The workspace is ready for tomorrow. You can leave with a clear conscience. You take one last look at the completed page on the drying rack. In the fading light, the gold of the illuminated letter glows softly. It will still be there tomorrow, and the day after, and the day after that. The work endures. You leave the scriptorium and close the door behind you. The evening meal is similar to the midday meal but simpler. Less soup, more bread. Perhaps some cheese if the monastery's dairy has produced enough. Perhaps some dried fruit, apples or pears from the monastery's orchards, dried for winter storage. The refectory is dimmer now. Candles provide most of the light, creating pools of warm glow at intervals along the tables. The shadows are deeper. The atmosphere is quieter, more subdued. The day is winding down toward night. Another brother reads during the meal. Tonight it is from the Psalms. The familiar verses flow over you as you eat. You do not need to concentrate on them. You have heard them hundreds of times. They are background, like the sound of rain, like the crackle of a fire. The food is simple but adequate. You eat without thinking about it particularly. Your body needs fuel and you provide it. The bread is good. The cheese is sharp and salty. The weak beer washes it down. As you eat, you let your mind wander slightly. You think about tomorrow's work. The gospel page you will begin. The prince's decree that needs copying. The ongoing projects, the slow accumulation of pages that will eventually become complete books. You think about the larger world, though you know very little of it directly. Somewhere to the south, the Ottomans are consolidating their territory. Somewhere to the west, there are political negotiations, alliances forming and breaking. Here in the monastery, these distant events are filtered through layers of rumor and interpretation. But the work continues regardless. Whether empires rise or fall, whether princes reign or are deposed, the monasteries continue their patient work of preserving, copying, protecting the written word. The meal ends. A brief prayer. Then dismissal. But the day is not quite over. There is one more service. Compline. The final prayers before sleep. Compline is the shortest of the daily services. It is designed to prepare the community for sleep, to quiet the mind, to release the day's concerns. The prayers are brief and focused. Protection through the night. Safe rest. Dreams undisturbed. You gather in the church one final time. The building is quite dark now. Only a few candles burn. The windows show deep blue, the last light fading from the sky. Stars are beginning to appear. The service is chanted almost in a whisper. Not full voice like the morning prayers. Quiet, intimate like a lullaby. The words are soothing, repetitive, designed to calm rather than energize. You stand in the dimness and let the words wash over you. Your body is tired from the day's work. Your mind is ready to rest. The service provides a transition, a boundary between work and sleep, between day and night. The final blessing is given. The abbot makes the sign of the cross over the gathered community. A benediction of protection, of rest, of peace through the dark hours. Then silence. The service ends without fanfare. Everyone simply disperses, quietly heading to their rooms. You walk through the dark corridors slowly. A few small oil lamps burn in niches, providing just enough light to navigate. Most of the monastery is dark now. Work has stopped. The community is settling into rest. You reach your room and enter. The room is very dark. You light a small candle, just enough to see by. You do not need much light for the simple tasks of preparing for sleep. You remove your outer robe and fold it carefully. You wash your face and hands in the basin of cold water. The water is very cold now, chilled by the night air. It is bracing, refreshing, washing away the day's accumulation of dust and fatigue. You say a brief private prayer, giving thanks for the day, asking protection through the night. The words are simple, personal, unstructured. Just a conversation with God, acknowledging the day's end, accepting the night's arrival. Then you extinguish the candle and lie down on your simple bed. The mattress is stuffed with straw, covered with a rough woolen blanket. It is not comfortable in the way a soft bed is comfortable. But it is familiar. It is enough. The room is completely dark now. You can hear small sounds from elsewhere in the monastery. A door closing. Footsteps in a corridor. The building settling, wood and stone contracting slightly in the cold night air. Outside, the wind moves through the trees. The forest surrounds the monastery, dark and vast. But you are safe within these walls. The thick stone keeps out the cold. The locked gates keep out any threat. Tomorrow the work will continue. But tonight you rest. As you lie in your simple bed in your cell at Neamț Monastery, we will take a few moments to return to your own body, your own time, your own resting place. You can bring your attention gently to the top of your head. Not trying to change anything. Not trying to relax particularly. Just noticing. Is there any tension in your scalp? In your forehead? Let your awareness rest there for a moment, light and easy. Your face. Your jaw might be holding slight tension. Your tongue might be pressed against the roof of your mouth. If you notice this, you can let it soften. Let your jaw become heavy and loose. Let your tongue rest easy in your mouth. Your shoulders. Throughout the day, we carry tension here without realizing it. As the scribe carried tension from hours of focused work. But you can let them drop now. Let them sink toward the surface beneath you. Heavy. Supported. Your arms resting wherever they are resting. Are they comfortable? If they are, you can simply notice that. they are not, you can adjust slightly, finding a position where they feel at rest, where no muscles need to work to hold them. Your hands. The scribe's hands worked all day, holding the quill, forming letters, managing tools. Your hands can be completely at rest now. Nothing to hold, nothing to do. Let them soften, fingers slightly curled, relaxed. Your chest, rising and falling with your breath. You do not need to breathe in any particular way. However you are breathing is fine. Just notice the gentle movement. In and out. Constant and easy. Your back, pressed against whatever surface supports you. The scribe's back held him upright for hours. Your back can release that effort now. Let it be supported. Let the surface beneath you do the work. You can rest. Your hips and legs. Any remaining tension can drain away. Let your legs be heavy. Let them sink. They do not need to carry you anywhere tonight. They can simply rest. Your feet. The furthest point from your head. Can you sense them even if you are under blankets? Let them be heavy and warm and completely relaxed. And now your whole body at once. Lying here in your own time, in your own place. Supported. Safe. With nothing required of you except this. Resting. Breathing. Being here. The scribe at Neamț Monastery sleeps now in his cell. Tomorrow he will wake before dawn and begin again. The work will continue. Letters will be formed. Pages will be completed. The patient effort of preserving knowledge will go on. But that is tomorrow. Tonight is for rest. The thick stone walls hold the cold at bay. The locked gates provide security. The community sleeps together in separate cells, each monk in his own small room, but all part of the same pattern, the same rhythm. The books the scribe creates will survive. The gospel manuscript he is copying will be completed, bound, used in church services. It may survive for decades, for centuries even. Future scholars may examine it, noting the style of the script, the quality of the illumination, the careful accuracy of the copying. They may trace it back to Neamț Monastery, to 1429, to the reign of Alexandru cel Bun. They may marvel that it survived fires and wars and the simple erosion of time. But they will not know the scribe's name. He did not sign his work. He did not seek recognition. He simply did the work as well as he could, then let it go into the world. This is the nature of so much work. Done carefully. Done faithfully. Then released. Not seeking credit. Not demanding notice. Simply contributing to the continuation of something larger than oneself. The monastery still stands today, rebuilt and expanded through the centuries, still holding manuscripts, still preserving the tradition. The work the scribe did that day in 1429 is part of why it still stands. His contribution, added to thousands of others, created something that endures. But we are not in 1429. We are here now in your time. And the work of this story is done. You have spent a day with a forgotten profession. You have seen the patient effort, the small repeated tasks, the dedication to accuracy and beauty. The work of the scribe was both simple and profound. Simple in its mechanics, holding a quill, dipping ink, forming letters. But profound in its purpose, preserving the words that would outlive empires, that would carry knowledge across centuries, that would connect the past to futures the scribe could not imagine. In the monastery library at Neamț, the books he copied joined others on wooden shelves. Some of those books survive today, 800 years later. The gold still glows. The ink is still dark. The words are still readable. His work endures because he worked carefully, patiently, with attention to detail that seems impossible in our hurried age. But perhaps that is the lesson of forgotten jobs. They remind us that meaningful work is often slow work. That quality comes from patience. That what lasts is built carefully, one small piece at a time, without rushing, without cutting corners. The scribe did not see the finished manuscript. He copied pages, but others assembled them, bound them, added covers. He was one part of a larger process, and he was content with that. Content to do his small part well, to contribute his effort to something greater than himself. As the monastery sleeps, the finished pages rest on their drying racks. Tomorrow they will be checked for errors, corrected if needed, then added to the growing stack that will eventually become a book. The work continues in stages, patient and methodical, as it has for generations. And now you can let all of that go. You do not need to remember it. You do not need to think about it. If you have fallen asleep somewhere in this story, that is perfect. That is what it was designed for. Sleep is not a failure. Sleep is success. If you are still awake, that is also fine. You can lie here quietly. You can let your thoughts drift. You can allow sleep to come when it is ready, without forcing, without worrying. Think of the scribe's hand, holding the quill for hours, forming letter after letter. Each letter required its own small effort, its own moment of attention. But the letters accumulated. They became words. The words became sentences. The sentences became pages. The pages became a book. This is how large things are built. Not all at once, but slowly, patiently, one small piece at a time. The scribe understood this. He did not think about completing the entire manuscript. He thought about completing the current letter, then the next letter, then the next. And in the same way, you do not need to think about the entire night ahead of you. You do not need to plan your sleep, manage your sleep, control your sleep. You only need to be here in this moment, and then the next moment, and then the next. The work of sleep is not work at all. It is release. It is letting go. It is allowing your body to do what it knows how to do, without interference from your conscious mind. Just as the scribe's hand knew how to form letters without his conscious direction, your body knows how to sleep. In the monastery, Brother Stefan makes his final rounds before sleep. He walks through the library one last time, checking that everything is secure, that the candles are all extinguished, that the precious manuscripts are safe. He does this every night. It is part of the rhythm, part of the protection. He pauses in the doorway, looking at the shelves lined with books. Each book represents months or years of labor. Each book is irreplaceable. And each book is also just paper and ink, just material objects that will eventually decay no matter how carefully preserved. What matters is not the objects themselves, but what they carry. The words, the knowledge, the connection between past and future. This is what the monastery protects. Not the parchment and ink, but the thread of meaning that runs through them. Brother Stefan closes the library door and locks it. The books rest in darkness, as they will rest for centuries. Tomorrow the library will open again. Readers will come. The books will be used. But tonight they rest, and the monastery rests, and you too can rest. The scribe's work required intense focus, but your work right now requires the opposite. Release, letting go, allowing your mind to soften its grip on the day. Whatever you experience today, it is done now. It is in the past. Tomorrow will bring its own tasks, its own concerns. But right now, in this moment, you have nothing to do except rest. The lamp in the scriptorium is extinguished. The candle in the cell has burned down to nothing. The monastery is dark and quiet. And you, in your own place, in your own time, can simply be here. breathing, resting, safe, supported, with nothing required of you.